She's an award-winning playwright and journalist who recently founded Lightcap Farm, a quirky enterprise that blends her passions for gardening and publishing with her obsession with Edward Abbey. Crane will read from her collection of essays, many of which aired on KVMR and other West Coast community radio stations between 1993 and 2003. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome Carolyn Crane.
But I know you're there. And thank you very much to Bill Gaynor and all of you at the Poetry Series for inviting me back. The place has never looked this nice. It's very sweet. So it has been a long time since I read, and I had lots of stuff to sit through. I have a couple new things to share with you this evening and some old stuff as well. One of the first things that I did when Bill asked me to read was I called my son up in Portland and asked him to help me figure out what to read, because I depend heavily on his opinion. And one of the things he said after he thought about it was, "Why don't you read some of your feministy stuff, Mom?" And I said, "What feministy stuff?" And he suggested these two, so I'll open with these. First is an essay that aired on KVMR in 1996, and it's called Breasts. Some of my best friends are men, and this essay goes out to them. Ellen Gilchrist said that women who love men often run their fingers over people's bodies a lot, but they are seldom crazy. With that and the subject matter both in mind, I send these words of advice out to the men that my women friends and I love to touch. When referring to our breasts, use caution. Do not use the word boob, for instance. A boob is not a breast. A boob is a simple, unintelligent person, such as Barney from the Andy Griffith Show. You can call Barney a boob, but avoid using the term when discussing the breasts of your own politically progressive lover. Likewise with tit. Tit conjures the images of snotty high school jocks around lockers. "What a pair of tits," they'd jeer as Sally the cheerleader walked by in her tight sweater. The woman you are now with was not Sally the cheerleader. The woman you've fallen in love with was standing near the jocks, waiting to get into the locker below theirs. Don't be confused if you hear women speaking among themselves use these words. That's locker room talk and not meant for your ears. One might say to the other, "Geez, my boobs are killing me after that aerobics workout." Pretend you didn't hear it. Equate it with the last time you heard African Americans address each other in the black slang of nigger. You wouldn't use that word simply because you did, because they did, now would you? Were breasts simply mammary glands, teat might be acceptable. And there have been times when nursing mothers feel more like they have teats than breasts. But breasts are not simply functional, and this we all know. Breasts are the stuff of Renaissance paintings and freeway fantasies. Breasts are art and magic. Breasts are tangible sensuality. A friend of mine, a male friend, claims there are two types of men, leg men and breast men. I've thought of this over the years, since it seems the only men I hang out with would fall into the latter category, which is fine by me. I think were I ever to encounter a leg man, I'd be a little sad. My breasts would miss the attention. Just as the woman you're in love with is not Sally the cheerleader, be careful to remember that neither are her breast Sallys. Always be on guard to not confuse the Playboy bunny breasts you sneak peeks at in Tower Records with real breasts. Real breasts are halfway in between those bunny breasts and the aboriginal breasts you studied in National Geographic in your youth. Your woman has these real breasts, breasts with the character that nursing, weight gain and loss, and gravity bring to them. Breasts with stretch marks and striations, and nipples that look suspiciously like the ones on baby bottles. They are magical and multifunctional, these real breasts. They have nourished children, and they have comforted you when you needed to snuggle down and be a boy again. They have aroused you when once comforted you remembered you were a man. Just like your woman, these real breasts will change through the years. And like your woman, treated well, they have the potential to appreciate you indefinitely. would you give me a 10-minute warning? Yes. Thank you. I tried to time these, but I got really bored trying to do that. So. This is a poem that is one of my favorite poems that I've written, one of the funnest, and it was in the NCPS 2001 anthology. The last time I read here, I read from this book. It's a good anthology. It's called Labia Ache. What you say began as tentativeness was in fact resolved to reject you. Again, I forgot to include labia ache in my need equation. I don't know if it is better or worse than a hard-on, but I know when I approach you with it, you offer to walk me to my car. It is not as direct as the press of clitoral expectation, but then I've been conditioned to sublimate my sexual complexities. Labia ache, the echo of deep need that men, after all, don't usually meet, only flirt with, short-sighted in the presence of their testosterone. Well, I've been spending a lot of time with my birth family the last several months, and that's always good ground for introspection, you might say. And so I've got a couple pieces here that, when I reviewed my work, seemed to really be telling about my childhood. So the first one is a sonnet I wrote called After the Game. After the game. At the table, Mama brings him milk toast. Flaccid lactose floods my nostrils as my dad inhales hot, globby bread. Post-game ambrosia. Mama waits in the shadows to bring another helping. I perch in the corner, hearing him talk, itemize the highlights, how my brother showed. Should have had 6 more, didn't watch the block. He stoops to glut the bottom of his bowl. Our mutt, old from begging, sits up against the wall. My dad slurps, not bothered by her lack of pride. She leans, senile statue, until I call, "This time won't be different." She turns aside. Shadowed, Mama asks, "What, honey?" I shrink away. She turns to tackle dishes in the sink. And this is essay probably circa 2000, 2001, called 7th Grade Dance. It's 1975, a hot spring day in my 7th grade classroom. Freddie West is circulating down the rows of desks in the moments after recess, before class convenes. His name isn't spelled with a PH, but it should be. That Friday night is our school dance, a rare thing in this antiquated Catholic institution, and he's determined to get a date. He asks every girl in class, down the rows methodically. Want to go to the dance? 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 He says it so many times it's like he's chanting. At least a dozen rejections before he gets to me. Yes, I say to him. He's already started to walk toward the next girl, who happens to be my best friend. Good thing I say yes, because if he'd asked her, she'd probably have slugged him. Yes, you mean it? He asks me. My best friend looks at me like I just killed her puppy. I have my reasons for accepting Freddie. Actually, one reason: desperation. After years of cat-eye glasses and braces, years of the popular boys calling me maggot, I feel obligated to take whatever of the earth's dregs is offered me. Freddie probably isn't dregs, but he seems so at the time. It hasn't occurred to me that I can do better. For the next few days, I'm teased mercilessly about going to the dance with Freddie. Maria and the other popular girls snicker behind their English readers. Teresa, the popular jock, shouts "desperate" whenever she sees me. Freddie gets his share, too, going to the dance with a maggot, poor guy. But neither of us regrets our decision. At least this time we aren't being teased for not having dates. I don't remember dancing with Freddie. All I remember of the actual dance is the smell of pubescent sweat, the dim lights, the punch bowl, the butterflies that came to my stomach at the idea of holding a boy for a slow dance. Toward the end of the dance, Freddie asks me if I'd like some fresh air. Even though I'm a nerd, I know what this means. We go out to the lawn. He wipes his lips with the back of his hand, and the thought of kissing him feels completely wrong. Still, I know I'll let him. It will take me a couple more decades to learn that I have a choice with things like that. But the night of the 7th grade spring dance, I'm a homely, awkward 12-year-old girl, willing to take anything anyone will give me. Right after Freddie wipes his mouth, I see a familiar face in my peripheral vision. Dad, here to pick me up. Within 10 seconds, I'm in the Jeep, homeward bound. My dad tells me I look beautiful. A real lady, he says. But I don't hear him. I don't believe him.
Need a hug, kid?
I've gotten plenty. I'm all better now. Here's one of the newest pieces I wrote. This was in the Union Other Voices in, I think, 2006, and in an abbreviated form, and I've continued to work on it, and still am actually working on it. On Saturday, August 19th, I traveled back into my past. The time machine was a small sailboat that left the Santa Cruz harbor at 11 a.m. The cargo, 6 passengers, a guitar, a few pieces of paper, and the ashes of my first love. He was raised in Nevada County and died here almost 26 years ago, just after his 18th birthday. His name was Wendell Roberts. He was a brilliant hippie teenager who washed dishes at Friar Tuck's when it was a tiny place. And thanks to an early beard, he sneaked into Duffy's Success for an occasional draft beer. He scored 1460 on his SATs and turned down a full ride to MIT to go to UC Riverside and major in English. He was the editor of the high school paper and on the wrestling team. Wendell died on Dog Bar Road at 1:35 a.m. on August 26, 1980. He was returning home from the state fair. That wasn't the way to his house, though. It was the way to mine. Although I'd already left for college in the Bay Area, I've always wondered why he was a passenger in a truck driving down that road. Officials named no cause for the accident, but family legend has it that his best friend Danny fell asleep. He was supposed to leave Nevada County a few weeks later, also bound to the Bay Area to begin his second year of college. Wendell and I were experiencing great turbulence in our relationship at that time. His family elected not to have a funeral for him. Through the years, I've kept in touch with them. In early August of 2006, I received a call from Langdon, one of his 2 younger brothers. He and his brother Mallory had realized they regretted their family's decision not to hold a ceremony, and while their father, who lives in England, was in the States, they wanted to bury Wendell's ashes at sea. "We need you there," Langdon said. "You knew a side of him we didn't." Wendell and his brothers were, to put it mildly, not that close. Recently, when I reviewed old letters I'd written him, they were returned to me after his death. I noticed occasional pleas I made asking him to be sweeter to his brothers. Despite the emotional distance that marked their childhood, it was important nearly 3 decades later for Langdon and Mallory to give him a proper and soulful burial. More than once I tried to talk myself out of joining them at the harbor. With so much old stuff. Why bring up so much old stuff? But in the end, I was there. I got to the harbor about 11, the last to arrive in our group. I had not seen Wendell's father in over 20 years, although I'd spent some time with him after Wendell's death. He greeted me with a warm bear hug. Langdon I see often since he lives in the Bay Area, but I had not seen Mallory since he was a young teen, since before Wendell's death. His deep brown eyes were haunting, exactly like his brother's. He held my hands in his and looked deeply into me. We grabbed our sweaters, the guitar, assorted papers, and Wendell's ashes, and headed for the sailboat. Moments later, we were out at sea. For an hour, we shared our memories of Wendell. His father told of their formative father and son cross-country trip when Wendell was just 4 years old. I read A Valediction Forbidding Mourning, a poem by John Donne that Wendell had once demanded I read after we had a fight. Mallory played Led Zeppelin on his guitar and read aloud the vows Wendell had written for our wedding, a less than legal, very private affair some 30 plus years ago in Pioneer Park. And one by one, we went to the bow with the urn of ashes and said our private goodbyes. As I sat there 6 inches above the Pacific with his ashes in my hand, I thought mostly of our broken dreams. They were broken finally by death, but time and time before by youth and immaturity and all we were up against. I let some of the ashes fall back in the box, holding on to just a bit. I already knew what I needed to do, but I hesitated because it seemed almost obscene. Even so, just for a moment, I had to experience some form of his DNA again. I rubbed the ashes deep into my cheeks, ground them in, absorbing their coarseness and their familiarity. I took another small handful and watched them sift down toward the ocean floor. I felt something leave me then, jump out of a dormant part of me, and join him in the water. Shaking, I took my seat and handed the urn with the last of the ashes to his father. On the way back to the harbor, we blasted Bruce Springsteen, Wendell's favorite, and huddled together. Our hands intertwined, gathered a puddle of our tears. Our shoulders shook. Just then, 26 years might as well have been 1 minute. About a year ago, I started working on a collection of poems about technology. Now, I do everything really slowly now. It takes me a long time to do anything. So I've got one poem ready to share. And so probably 15, 20 years, I'll have that collection wrapped up. But I guess after 2012, there won't be any more technology. So I'll have plenty of time to sit there with my stone tablet and think about it. So this is the first one. It's called Delete. The emails we write but don't send teach us what is giving us acne on the inside, goading our intestines, rankling our anus, clogging our lungs. The emails we write but choose to delete are hard-earned after those dashed off and then fumed and feuded over as we hunched in the outhouse, cringing at our stinginess. Fucked up, time-hyped, trivial correspondences. Fingers flash, keyboard glistens. Wait, do you remember Darcy and Elizabeth? The angsty epistles penned with feathers? Pensive days pacing while a message traverses by horse cross-country? The agony of our overture unanswered, our honesty unexplored in that hellish limbo of transit. How has that time-bending torture for response evolved into a vaccination for patience? But the email deleted, rage vented and eliminated in a moment, with power in the pulse of your fingertip, that instant of deliberation. It is then you choose to leave roads open, to study the loamy imperfections within your own soul. You choose the dirt, the human. So we're coming up on Indigenous Peoples Weekend that many years ago was known in this area as Columbus Day. But a lot has changed here in 30 years. As Julie mentioned in my introduction, I read a lot of Edward Abbey and think a lot about Edward Abbey, and I just discovered this poem, rediscovered one of the earliest poems that I'd written. I better make sure I have all my pages for them. And I wrote this after an experience I had in 1987, 1988 on an Indian reservation in Oregon, a Paiute reservation. It's called Wilson Weewa and the RV. 1. Some things I remember: straight black braid, hues of purple. Straight as his backbone, he sat in his swivel chair, eyes carving mine, honing out my truth. Will you help me? I ask. His eyebrows raise, nose narrows as he scans my white man map. These lines mean nothing, and he looks away. I follow his eyes to the tokens on his wall. Notice the diploma, Wilson Weewa, Harvard University. What's the Paiute word for water, I ask, whisking out my reporter's pad. No notes. That flat, ungiving look again. Take only what you can remember. With no map and notepad, I am naked, spindly. He sits silent, immense. Black eyes swerve toward no apology. Panin, he says in a flat voice, and I repeat, Panin, running water, learning a new language in a land of no control. 2. I'm glad to be the passenger as we journey back to camp, sepia blunt cliffs. We stop, look down a canyon to the river a mile below, looking still, blue, a trickle. I hear Weewa's remembrance in the canyon's echo. On horseback with my grandfather, we hunted antelope on the bluffs. I see them in shadows, this country their world, guns raised as the bow once was, rifle shot piercing a silence they understood. Now our car winds the pavement toward camp. Fences scar the landscape, markers of a land once thought not taken, like sky or air. 3. We pull into Big Bend Campground on the Deschutes River, snake around to our campsite, the most remote on the riverbank where we've spent a week. In front of our narrow drive lurks a silver RV, 20 feet long, silent hulk. The entrance of our campsite blocked, we skirt the road, roll our small car onto the grass. A man steps from the rig. Didn't think you'd mind. This is the best campsite. Your tent's so far down the hill. I look around at the empty campsites he might have chosen, and at our tent 30 feet away. The RV sits 10 feet from our picnic table. Impossible to miss. Took me 20 minutes to level my rig. Sure hope we don't have to move. I feel the blood rise thick in my neck. I scan him from balding gray to cowboy boots. My friend takes me aside. It's our last night. He's old. Let him stay. I am too angry to speak. I nod against my will. He tells the old man, who returns to his silver world. We do not see him again. I cook facing the river back to the silver rig, feeling it choke me. My food tastes like bile. My dreams are full of fences. By morning I cannot speak, cannot share the language of the man from the RV. 4. Heading south through Oregon, I still see Weewa's hair flying as he canters his horse, rifle hanging from one arm, spine agile on the bare back. I have no language to tell him that I am the man balding gray in cowboy boots. I am the man driving the silver RV. How are we doing on time, Julie?
Like 4 or 5 minutes.
Okay. Then I will close with a couple things. Another very new poem and an older essay. This is called River Marriage Poem. Where the river water marries the riverbank in mutual discovery is where a few days ago I saw you pondering the merging point. I've come to know the way you think, how the thoughts manifest in your body with less than a gesture, more than an impulse. You looked up then and saw me, and then I think I knew. It was more than the crescent moon's promise of fullness as it shined upon the pool just upstream from where we stood, more than the minnow breaking the glassy water top with tiny sounds that added to the silence of the night. You pulled me to you then with one arm, and then I think we both knew. We want that promise that is like this river, changing and evolving in ways difficult to predict or understand, intended to perplex, to mystify, to guarantee mutual discovery. We walked then, hand in hand, back toward the house. my son Forrest's other request was that I end with this essay, which is also about Wendell, and it's called Wendell in Springtime. I think I wrote this in the late 90s. I am 16. I am a Catholic Air Force brat transplanted to the suburb of Alta Sierra. My parents have warned me that Nevada City is a town full of dangerous artists and homosexuals. I write for the high school paper and start staring at the editor. He's a senior. His name is Wendell. Wire-rimmed glasses, crazy curly black hair, disheveled, absent-minded, surely a future professor. One day he tells me where he lives, downtown Nevada City. Pretty much by himself, he says. His mother checks in twice a week or so. He works at a restaurant and eats there. Soon I'm in love. I sneak away from high school dances to his waiting car, a dilapidated Chevy Vega that starts almost half the time. I stare and stare into his brown eyes, and unlike any boy I've ever met, there is something there besides a drooly kind of lust staring back at me. He brings me to Nevada City. We walk around town and he says hi to almost everyone. Silently, I try to identify dangerous artists and homosexuals, but I'm wise enough not to ask for his help. He points out the local bar that he says, in its stupidity, will actually serve him a beer even though he's 17. We walk up to his house on East Broad. It's just like the college pads I'll come to know in a year or two. Rock posters, splotches of paint on the floor, records and books everywhere. It is there he teaches me about Donovan, Dylan, the Byrds, Pete Seeger, Woody Guthrie. Peter, Paul, and Mary, he says, are not worth listening to. Didn't do much more than bad covers of Dylan songs, he says. I write it all down in my mind, these dangerous new names, already decades into folk and rock history. I've never heard of them. Years later, I spout off Wendell's truths in college and am shocked that people disagree with me. He teaches me about poetry, Ferlinghetti, Kerouac, Ginsberg. I've never heard of beatniks. It was years later before I realized the significance of Wendell so often dressing in black. Soon it is spring, and this boy has fused with my every waking thought. I start to dress in sandals and flowing sundresses I buy in thrift stores. My parents watch with stone faces, waiting for me to cross a line they've drawn for me, but none of us has mentioned. My brother keeps repeating the name, Wendell, in a fake whiny voice while he motions with a limp wrist. Every day I am farther from them until one day they cannot reach me. Wendell drives me to the river, something I've heard of but never gone to. Like downtown Nevada City, my parents have categorized it as dangerous. We lie in the spring sunshine for a while watching his best friend Danny act stupid on the rocks. Danny rock hops out of sight eventually, and we lie all the way back onto the huge rock beneath the bridge. I rest my head in the curve of Wendell's bicep and shoulder. It's the first time I've found that nesting position, but I recognize it right away as a place I belong. I think there, eyes closed, for a long time, about Donovan, Ginsberg, dangerous men and dangerous towns. I smell in the spring air something I won't define for years. I smell myself growing. Are you asleep? Wendell asks, and I'm so close to sleep I don't answer, although I hear. He waits a moment, then tilts his head up so that his mouth is right next to my ear. When I still don't answer, he takes a breath and says as softly as possible, I love you. He kisses my head just above my ear and rests his head again on the warm granite. I feel the adrenaline, my heart rate. So this is it, I think. This is life. I breathe deeply. Let the spring sun lull me to sleep. Thank you.
Next up, we have an exciting Sacramento poet. Martha Ann Blackman has read her poems and performed her songs in Sacramento, the Bay Area, and the Northwest since 1973. She was a poet in the schools through the Sacramento Metropolitan Arts Commission. Blackman co-edited with Annie Menebroker the book Watching from the Sky and published a book of her own work, The By Book. as in bye-bye. Bye. Her poems have been widely published in local and national journals and magazines. Long recognized for her social and political activism, Blackman's commitment to environmental safety made her a vocal spokesperson for the successful closure of the nuclear power plant Rancho Seco. Wow. She remains a sought-after speaker and continues the good fight. Ladies and gentlemen, Martha Ann Blackman.
Thank you. Boy, it is blind up here, huh?
We can see you, kid.
I see you. Nave. It's delightful to be here tonight. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you, Bill. Really
Oh,
appreciate
thank
it very,
everybody.
very much.
Thank you.
A few people who are here have seen me read before and see all the tags. This is a collection, and rather than take it apart, I tag it. So there are lots of things here to slip through. It's really special to be able to write poetry. Poetry is a passion for many people. And for me, I put it away for a while, except for writing it. I spent 10 years in the Rancho Seco campaign, and during that 10 years, I became somewhat of a public figure, and to the point where people would recognize me in the grocery store, stuff like that. And after that time, I pretty much cloistered off for a while. So a few years back, maybe a year and a half ago actually, I sent some things to Rattlesnake Press, and 5 of them were accepted that day. So I went, oh, I'm back again, I guess. So from that, I've been doing readings pretty regularly, and it's really a joy. So thank you for having me here. I really appreciate it. This is a collection of things that I have read in the last 4 readings that I've done. So if you've been there, you've seen a few of these. And there are a few new things as well that you may not have heard. The first one, open cadence mantra. Strength, wisdom, perseverance, compassion, kindness, love. Strength, wisdom, perseverance, compassion, kindness, love. Strength, wisdom, perseverance, compassion, kindness, love. I have a lot of short poems mixed in with a few longer ones. So in the vein of poets of the old time, you may hold your applause until the end if you like. That would be good too. Poetry, 3 poems. Not all of it's biographical. Some flows where it goes, has no meaning that you know. Just hold on and let go of the moment. 2, to write down, to record, to make time stand still. 3, poetry isn't everything. It's merely the song caught by the wind, chasing past tree boughs with a bird winging by. Poetry, like mist on fern, dew to my soul. This one is called For Us All. Mesa Verde High School in Sacramento had a special art gallery showing, and I was invited to enter a poem in that, and this is the one they chose from me, For Us All. Your main purpose is to be at one, and to know that power which moves you, every thought, creating the beginning and continuing action. Take hold and look up in spirit. Take hold and look up in love. Take hold and look up in peace. See the small space of your being in the light of the universe. See the large space of your being in the sum of the universe. See strength and let it show. See grace and let it grow like a bright star sky high in the Sierra. Bill doesn't know how to not clap.
If they love you, let them, sweetheart.
French Meadows. In 1977, 3 of us rode up to French Meadows from Kelsey. Kelsey, most of you most likely already know, is between Placerville and Auburn. And I lived there for 3 months. It was not snow on the ground in Kelsey. However, in French Meadows, it was. So it surprised us a little bit. At French Meadows, we found snow. It found us, captured us, kept us. Car on the edge of a precipice, walking went we for miles, holding snow for strength like a dream, till the rumble of engine, welcome engine, sparked light where there was none but day, with night falling fast. No sound sweeter breaking the silent spring in the woods, for that time, for that place, for us. Off the road, way back, we found cabin, snowmobile, roaring the key to our passage to guide us home. Once back, we marvel how close we can come to the edge and still get home again. A good many of these poems were published in Medusa's Kitchen, which is a blog for Rattlesnake Press. One was published in Rattlesnake Review number 23, some in Poetry Now, which is the Sacramento Poetry Center's book. Not their book, sorry, their newsletter. So these are a mix of those, plus some that no one's ever published at all.
But dirty bastards.
I have a lot of catching up to do after hiding for a long time. This one's called Making Home. I don't usually explain poems, but I would like to explain one thing in this so you understand what it's about. My father worked in a shipyard, and he worked on ships like the Enterprise and a lot of large Navy vessels. And he was a pipe fitter. A pipe fitter is a ship's plumber. So that will give you some idea of what this means. Briarfield School had a wooded area where we played, made rooms with pine straw edges to practice making home. Daddy worked in the shipyard, pipe fitter. Sometimes he would wake up under the tall bed, springs having become the pipes in his dreams. Imagination carried us where we needed to go. Okay. I think I'm going backwards now. I might need someone to come help me figure out these things here. Or I might skip one and go back. Everyone breathe.
Practice your yoga.
Practice your yoga. I can't have lost this because it's too important to have lost. Can't ever lose a poem. This is about my mom. This is called Small Things. And I wrote it right after she passed, actually. In the nursing home, convalescent they call it now, souls reach out for a heart, a hand, while they wait in line for breaths of oxygen, wheelchairs for movement, and sips of thick liquids to encourage the accomplishments of a tomorrow, driven only as a ride to town. A stroll in the mall, a walk to the door unassisted and smiling, putting it all on the line. One great gamble that will either put things in gear or leave vacant eyes searching for the words still heard, still understood. She thinks, how can you not know that all the words come in and stop here? Swirling and spiraling, can't you see them dancing in my head? Hand squeezes, flutter of eye, purse of lips into kiss. Imagined always. Sometimes conveyed, more than less, less. As that foot crosses over, tired of waiting toward spirit, her God, Chase, Daddy, sisters, aunts, uncles, her mom and dad, a step over, leaving more questions, yet leaving lots of answers, like how to make the best salmon cakes anyone ever tasted. My mom. 7. Poem 7. After the service, also for Mom. After the service, I thought of a million things, how in my tender years she worked the farm. She made soap and washed clothes outside in a big iron pot. She smoked her own bacon and canned her own ripe garden a full season at a time. I would say how she planted row after row all day in the hot sun and harvested too, with a jar of ice water half buried for us in the field. My mom. She almost got here tonight, but not quite. There was a Charlie Mingus album that Joni Mitchell did a number of years back, quite a while back actually. And this piece came from that. It came to me from that. On the album was this statement. Charles Mingus, a musical mystic, died in Mexico January 5th, 1979, at the age of 56. He was cremated he was cremated the next day. That same day, 56 sperm whales beached themselves on the Mexican coastline and were removed by fire. Mingus. Mingus was a lucky man. He knew his jive. He knew his jive. He knew his jazz man. Mingus knew his stuff. Mingus was a lucky man. He knew his jive. He knew his jive. He knew his jazz man. Mingus knew his stuff. The competition thing got so vain, it got so rough. He was a red ribbon winner, sometimes blue, had a gold star or two to hang on his bass string. He'd everything and nothing to do. He'd everything and nothing to do. He'd everything and nothing to do with this whole scheme of things and you. He was a lucky man. He knew his jive. He knew his jive. He knew his jazz man. Mingus knew his stuff. Well, if your name is Joni, and there's Henry Robinette too, well, you've had access to that man. He's shown you his plan. He's given of himself to you so much to you. He was a lucky man. He knew his jive. He knew his jive. He knew his jazz man. Mingus knew his stuff. Hey, that's enough. If you know your stuff, I say that's enough. He knew his stuff. Mingus. A few years back, Dennis Schmitz and Viola Weinberg were the poet laureates of Sacramento, and they put out a call for poems to create the Sacramento Anthology 100 Poems. And of course it had to be about Sacramento in some way. Sacramento morning. The quiet of the day was dark. A glow pushed upward in the eastern sky. A planet hung low, and the moon arched high and to the south, almost lying down. Looking northwest, trees silhouette against blue-black, too blue-gray, too gray-blue, too blue, for the air is clear today. A storm just passed over, a time of change. A storm just passed over, a time of Scorpio. A storm just passed over, a time of electrical wires that obstruct every tree, a time of birds welcoming the dawn, a time when helicopter, plane, and cars surround, shake the literal earth. Where are we going and why? What is this place and what is its destiny? Native Americans looked at their present in terms of generations to come. Earth, sun, moon, creator provided. And we accepted, took. I look at small patches of green and tiny hills as if without wires. I hear birds and pretend the freeway drone is a waterfall. I join the rumble and walk into the day. At the altar, Rock Lake. There's something so very special about being in the high mountains, and it really touches my soul. A lot like the ocean, but different energies, you know, but they both have that touch soul feeling. Do you not want to stay a while? Can you not withstand the chill? Provide warmth for body without a blanket? Do you not want to see the sunset? Just as the tiniest green speck, a half foot from my eyes, the tiniest green speck is many parts making the whole. It would do you well to listen. Just as the minute black insect walked across this page and flew away, part of a tribe such as you. Just as all you touch and see is magnified in your eyes, while sitting in the cool shade looking at the sun-lightened ridge, feel the warm, watch the line, pull the cool night in and begin to remember the sun. A couple more. The preface to my getting involved in shutting down Rancho Seco and becoming a spokesperson for the group that did so. 10 years before that closure, 3 Mile Island had a partial meltdown. And the newspapers said that Rancho Seco was a twin to TMI. And the hair stood up on the back of my neck, which meant I had to do something, you know. And so I wrote this poem. It's prefaced by this statement from the Sacramento Union newspaper on June 5th, 1979. A balloon released from the Rancho Seco nuclear power plant on April 2nd has been found in Burley, Idaho. It carried a tag that read, "This could be radiation released from Rancho Seco nuclear power plant. We wonder where it goes. We wonder where it blows, do not know. And we choose to see, yet we cannot see you or me where it blows, where it goes. It goes to earth, air and sea, to you and me. And then after that, after 10 years, this was the closure. It only took 10 years. And this is basically a story of my involvement in that. Richard Hansen of Poems of All put it in one of his little sweet books. For Muriel Daly. It came to her in a wind song from across the miles. It was a warning. It meant no harm. The trees murmured the rumor till the creatures could smell its tracks. She was one of the creatures who heard. Her friend the crow told her, and the other birds joined in. The birds heard first because they were on the wind. The woman heard because she was meant to hear and to tell, to tell, to tell. Together, the creatures pondered and learned the secret. Not all understood. There are few so still as the rocks who hear the sound of even the lowest whisper. Still, the word went out, and those with heart heard the sound of 10 years of murmuring, and a change was made. A direction moved in the wind song, and it was sweet again, and it only took 10 years. Thank you very much.